Hey there, I am Barb Higgins, and this is 1,000 Tiny Steps. In this podcast, I share my stories of love, loss, triumph, and tragedy as I continue to retrace my steps and ponder what led to the death of my daughter Molly. By doing so, I hope to not only help myself, but to bring purpose and possibility to those who listen. If you are ready to laugh, cry, shake your head in disbelief, then tie, buckle, lace up, or slip on your shoes, and join me as we begin our 1,000 Tiny Steps.
It is spring in New England, and although the air is not necessarily warm, the sun is strong. If you're watching this version of 1,000 Tiny Steps, episode 193, then you'll see a big honking blister on my lip, or just a red spot, cold sore, whatever you want to call it. The sun gets me year after year. I know that the warm weather has arrived because I get like a sun blister on my face, on my lips, and then it will go away and I'll be fine for the majority of the summer. So for those of you not watching, you're welcome for the description of my disgusting lip right now. Anyway, it's staring at me as I record the episode, so I just figured I would share it with y'all. So May 13th, 6 days after we unplugged Molly, 9 years ago today. Not an easy place to be, and as I have said a million times, child loss grief is far more intense and horrifying and impossible to comprehend than any other form of grief. Now, before y'all get mad at me and say that losing your mother or your father or your brother or your sister or your sibling or your pet or your dog is just as bad, I am sure it is. Because the worst loss that you have had, whenever that is the worst one you've had. Unless you were a child that lost a parent or a child that lost a sibling, I feel very safe in saying that if you then went through the process of losing a child, you would see that it had a whole list of things attached to it that are far different than other forms of grief. As I record this, it's still April. We're getting ready to head off to Florida to see Gracie, and I am processing the hard reality of my week in Amsterdam, and that I missed 8 straight days of Molly's lasts, her last school vacation, her last trip to a movie theater, her last trip to Chuckster's, her last ice cream, her last wiffle ball game in the yard, her last sharing of the iPad with Gracie before they fall asleep. All of it, I missed it. And I struggle to this day with all of the things that I missed in regard to Molly's death. And that struggle and the attachment to so much of what my life was in the weeks leading up to her death have kept me away from things that I love. I decided to talk about the Boston Marathon on the podcast because, first of all, everyone's heard of the Boston Marathon. Second of all, it's a huge event that was a regular part of my life for 30 years plus. Every year, I had some connection to the marathon. Marathon Monday never went by without me taking part in some manner. I have never run it. That's to come. And I went this year, and I had a wonderful time. I worked at a photo booth for a company that my friend Steve Delahunty owns. I basically took pictures of people all day. They would stand in front of a screen, and when they stood in front of it, their race information would come up, their name, their bib number, their place, their time, all of it on this really fancy screen. It was fantastic. And I would take their picture and just talk all day. So surround me with people, I'm A-okay. And so it was a good day. But it took me months to commit to going and doing this one little task. I think what made it so great is I was in the 3rd floor of a hotel. I wasn't on the sidelines. I wasn't looking at and reliving former experiences of the marathon. I don't think I will ever be able to watch the marathon from Kenmore Square ever again. The last 2 marathons I went to, I was with Robin. We watched from just above Kenmore Square. If you know me, you know my experiences with Robin. And the last one, just weeks before Molly's death, I argued with Roy the whole time I was watching the marathon. So very, very, very traumatic connections to Kenmore Square and the marathon. I didn't offer to work at a mile station anywhere near there. I was inside a hotel. Yes, I was seeing runners, but they were runners that had finished, that gotten their space blankets, that gotten some water, and were staggering in to eat some food and move along in their lives. And I got to have a wonderful moment with them. So why was this so big for me? Well, one of the major aspects of child loss is that it just throws a brick in the face of what you thought your life was going to be. Now, I know when anyone dies, all of our connections to them here on earth stop. So no more Christmases together, or no more Hanukkahs together, or no more baseball games together, or whatever it is that you do with your loved ones. When my mother dies, I know that I will ponder the last time I sat on the porch with her, because it's a place we spend a lot of time. But I also know that I will not ruminate over all the things I should have been able to do with my mother because she's 82, almost 83. So I've had all of my life to do things with my mother, and I have. And our relationship has traveled along in a really normal way. The night before Molly died, I did not in a million years think it was her last night alive. I did not, because why would I? And my mindset was such that, yes, my marriage was in trouble. Yes, things were going to be tricky at home, but the end of the school year was always fun. We had plans for the summer. We had all manner of things set up. And then she's dead. So none of those things happen. And they're just regular day-to-day things like the final dance recital, the last day of school, the first trip to the beach, all the things that we do every year to mark the beginning of summer. Yes, Gracie was here. Yes, we did all of those things. But Molly wasn't with us, and so they were just shallow, hollow, feeble attempts to replicate something that no longer existed. And that's a very, very difficult way to live. In my own life, I've had a series of losses and a series of traumatic events that have taken things from me. And running disappeared from my life in any meaningful way in 2011. That was when, actually 2010, when I lost my job in the district. Because I live in a small community, all things running were connected to all things in the newspaper and all things Amy and Roy and all things gossip. Amy had inserted herself into the running community. And so there was this division for a bit. The truth has the way of rising, and the cream rises to the top, and the truth does the same thing. And after a couple of years, I had a lot of people come and offer condolences and apologies to how they treated me at that time. Like 2 days ago, as I record this nasty article appeared in the Concord Monitor. It was just like a gossip rag article about Amy's family and my family. It was the ugliest thing ever. It belonged in the National Enquirer. And I look back now at the slow decline of print media, and I think it was a way for the Concord Monitor to sell a lot of newspapers. So, I'm a newspaper seller, I guess. At any rate, since Molly's death, I have disappeared from a lot of things. Since my job loss, I disappeared from running, and I found CrossFit. And CrossFit was a wonderful bridge for me to maintain movement and physicality and athletics in my healing process and in my life. And so I dove into CrossFit much like I dove into running when I was in high school. And it saved me, and I've talked a lot about that. So back to running. As I get older and continue track camp and venture more into the community, my connections to running are coming back a bit. And I miss it, quite honestly. I've timed a handful of races since Molly's death, not many. I have gone to some races and run. My friend Pam and I run together. I haven't committed to it. I find 100 reasons not to go running. And I think it's because it still evokes a lot of sad memories for me. But like anything, as time moves along, you get to a point, two roads diverged in a yellow wood. You get to your Robert Frost moment where you stand at a crossroads or a fork in the road and you think, what do I do now? And for me, the fork represents continuing along the path or making a change. And I mutter about all the time about things I want to change about myself. I don't like this, I don't like that. And then I sort of muddle along and do the same thing. Indecision is a very, very huge defense mechanism for me. If I don't make a decision, then I'm not making the wrong decision. Does that sound familiar? So back to Boston. Steve asked several months ago if I'd be willing to go to Boston and work. And he gave me all sorts of options. You can work all 3 days. You can stay the whole weekend down there. I have a place. The company has a place. And all of that was utterly overwhelming. And if that were the only option, I would have said no. But I said I'd be happy to drive down. And I'd like sort of a midday job if you have one. So I can just drive down, do my job, and drive home, which is what I did. I left Concord at 9:30, and I was home by 6:30. And I had, in between there, a wonderful drive to the city, a wonderful drive into the city to find parking, a wonderful walk to the hotel, a wonderful time dealing with runners and interacting with people from all over the globe, and a lovely drive home. It was just all in all an amazing day. Probably one of the most poignant pieces of the day for me were 3 quick visits I had with Joanie. So for those of you who don't know who Joanie is Joan Benoit Samuelson. She was the Boston Marathon winner in 1979 and 1983. In 1983, she set an American record on that course. She was my college coach at Boston University my freshman and sophomore year. That was the first year that the NCAA recognized women and gave scholarships and held universities accountable for providing sports opportunities for women. Sports opportunities for women remain very important to me. It was the first year that the NCAA indicated that girls should get scholarships just like boys. So BU dove in wholeheartedly, hired Joan Benoit, not yet Samuelson, not married yet, and recruited the crap out of the United States, and 7 of us showed up. 2 years ago, right after I had my brain surgery, we had a reunion and everybody went to watch Joanie run her final Boston. And I had just had surgery, and so I couldn't go. So I was here at home while they were all just an hour away from me, enjoying the marathon. And they went and saw Joanie at the Copley, which is a fancy hotel right at the finish. So in letting everyone know that I was going to be at the race, and was anyone else going, meaning my BU folks, Joanie reached out and said, I'm at the Copley, come by and try to find me. And so I did. I got to Boston, I got set up. I went across the street, I met Joanie. She was just coming out. We had a quick minute to say hi to one another. She was heading to the finish. And I went to my post and started doing my job. And she said, I'll be at your hotel between 2 and 4. Let's try to connect. So I went down at about 2:30 and again, ran into her in transition. She was with her wonderful son-in-law and grandson, Cooper. Her daughter, Abby, ran. She ran 3 hours and 2 minutes exactly. And again, we said, let's try to get together a bit later and get a photo taken with Joe. So enter Joe, another important piece of my day. Joe is this wonderful human being who is cousins with Kathy. Kathy is one of my teammates from BU, and he is a concierge at the Copley. And so I found him and let him know who I was and that I was cousins with Kathy. And so he was the one that initially connected me to Joanie. And so we wanted to get a picture taken with Joe. It's a nice connection for Joanie and I. He takes such good care of her. He is such a fine human. He has a wonderful dog named Corey, who's world famous, gets his own Boston Marathon bib number. It's all the little beautiful tidbits of the marathon. So when I was done with my job and packed up, I went downstairs and found Joanie and I said, look, I'm done. I'm heading home. So we walked across the street to the Copley. And we chatted for maybe 15 minutes and we talked about just life and kids and Jack and her granddaughter, Charlotte. And we talked about running. We talked about Molly and Molly's death. And it's very hard for Joanie. It's hard for anybody. And I don't want to speak for Joanie, but when I speak of Molly, she's immediately so just kind and supportive. And you're doing a great job. And you keep marching along and you keep doing these things. And it fills my heart because she was my coach. She was somebody I idolized. I gave her a really hard time at BU as an athlete. I know I did. When she set the American record at Boston, we were all there on the sidelines cheering her on. It was so much fun. And then she was the first female Olympic gold medalist. Women weren't allowed to run anything longer than the 1500 until 1984. And then the 3000 and the marathon were added. We share so much history in the sport and so much history as human beings. And she's this amazing piece of my life. And it's never lost on me. Every time we walked anywhere, she was stopped 2 or 3 times for autographs. And, after a while, this must get exhausting, but people love her and I love her. And so as I drove home, I realized, I really should talk about this because returning to the marathon is a huge piece of my grief story, of my grieving journey as a mother with a dead child. I stayed away from Boston. 2016 to now, that's 9 Bostons that I simply avoided because the last time I was at the Boston Marathon, Molly had 10 days to live and I didn't know it. That's hard for me now. However, the marathon represents so much more than my mistakes. The marathon represents so much more than poor friendship choices or disastrous relationship choices. The marathon represents years of my life where running was what saved me. Running was what got me through giving birth to Gracie and Molly. Running helped me heal from child abuse and sexual abuse. Running made me like my body and not want to change it. Running. And so it was almost like a welcome home party for me. And as much as I wish all my teammates were there, it was kind of nice to do it on my own terms and at my own pace. This is grief. This is the grief journey. 3 or 4 years ago, I couldn't have contemplated this. And quite honestly, when all my teammates went to Boston, a part of me was almost relieved I couldn't go because it allowed me to view it from the distance and wish I was there and not get there and fail miserably at being able to handle it. So as I was driving home, I was, just pondering when I was there in 2016 and how much fun Robin and I had and all of the shenanigans and things we got into and the walking around and just the magic of the marathon. And I thought, wow, I had no idea that I wouldn't go back for 9 years. And that got me thinking of lasts. How we do things every day, assuming that we'll do them 100 more times, because that's the logical way to live. When I get up out of bed, I don't assume it's my last time getting out of bed. Why would I? Because I'm, 61-year-old mother of Jack and I'm healthy and I have a long to-do list. And why would I ever think this could be the last time I wake up? Well, because it could, I guess. That got me to thinking of Molly's last. And so this has been sort of floating around in me for the last few days. And I think it's an important thing to talk about. My last 2 podcast episode guests were a recovered drug addict, Skylar, and another child loss mom, Joanie. Two very different human beings. Two human beings who have had unspeakable trauma in their lives. Two human beings who are doing the best they can, albeit very differently, to move along in life and to be okay. I've mentioned before, I outed my cocaine use in my interview with Skylar. And I did so not because I'm really ready to share this dark, dark time of my life, but I would be disingenuous if I support her being brutally honest and not being brutally honest myself. I am no better than Skylar, and I am no worse than Skylar. We are the same in so many ways. Those thoughts have been pondering around through my head. You know, did I know the last time I used cocaine that it would be my last time? I don't know that I did. I know that I wanted it to be, but I wasn't sure. I didn't really know it was the last time until months and months and months had gone by, and I had gotten to the point where I solidly knew I would never do it again today, right? One day at a time. I've been thinking about these things, my lasts, my firsts, my lasts, my firsts, my lasts. And I mostly think about them as they relate to Molly. So she died on May 7th. We unplugged her. And I wrote a blog a couple of weeks ago that on May 8th, it dawned on me that a year ago, May 8th, 2015, was Molly's last May 8th. That the entire last year of her life, every day was the last time she'd be alive on that day. That's an overwhelming thought. Think of it for a moment. If my death day is January 5th, 2026, then this is my last ever April 23rd, right? Like that's what day it is today. As I record, as I publish, this would be my last ever May 13th. Like, you don't think about that. You don't get up and think this is the last one. I did not wake up and think in the year 2016, all of January, all of February, all of March, all of April, that these were my last days in this year with my daughter Molly alive, because I didn't think that she would die. After her death, it's all I thought about. And then questioning, is this my last May 5th with Molly? Is it with Gracie? Is this my last July 4th with Kenny? These things can swallow you up. As I've processed through all of this in my life, year 1 without Molly, year 2 without Molly, year 3 without Molly, I've been very, very, very fixated on certain things. Year 1 was about sitting perfectly still and not doing anything. And by that, I mean not celebrating holidays, not keeping a running log, getting up and sitting on the porch and drinking coffee and scrolling my phone and just getting through the day. Did I go to the gym? Yes. Did I make big decisions? No. Did Gracie go to school? Sometimes. Did we sleep on the floor? Yes. Did we begin a lawsuit? Yes. Did we deal easily with Molly's death? No. It was just a year of a holding pattern. Year 2 ultimately was much of the same. We had developed a routine. We could get up and go through the motions of the day. I had started working really part-time, tutoring at the state hospital. And the only reason I could manage that was because the kids in that hospital were sicker than me. And so I felt a measure of safety in that environment. I remember talking about how comforting it was for the door to lock behind me as I sat on the units and worked with these kids. It was intense times. I know when I lost my job, CrossFit was what saved me. And probably on some levels, it saved me again here. I didn't stop going to the gym. But what I did start doing right after Molly died is using cocaine regularly. The person that gave it to me, manipulative, had his own agenda on why this might be good for me. All these decisions made in panic and fear and trepidation. If I could go back and do it all different, I would, except maybe I wouldn't, because what I've learned from it and how I've grown from it and what I've gleaned from it will make me far more helpful to others than I might be otherwise. Child loss community is interesting. As always, there are different levels and there is judgment. Child loss moms can be as judgy as anybody else. The stories I hear sometimes over how mothers who have lost children are treated are so hurtful and hard to hear. And I can share some of my own. Child loss doesn't change the dynamics of mean people, so we find things to do. In those early years after Molly died, I couldn't function. Getting high 4 or 5 times a week gave me enough of a break that I could be stone cold sober the rest of the time and do what I needed to do. Am I proud of that? No, of course not, but I'm not ashamed of it either. That was my journey. That was the path for me. I am incredibly lucky that I could walk away from it without real physical addiction withdrawals. I am incredibly lucky. It's not that way for everybody. This skill of mine, this ability to take drugs and not take drugs, to drink and quit and drink and quit, reminds me of a student I had who made fun of me once. Because I sort of bragged how I can quit all the time. I've quit a million times. And his response was, oh, so you've relapsed a million times. And there it is, half empty, half full. This week, the week with April 22, 23, 24, Gracie's birthday, 25, those dates were the vacation week the year Molly died. So this is the day that I left Concord and flew to Amsterdam as I record, April 23rd. So my last hug and kiss with a conscious Molly was 9 years ago today. At this time of day, I was in Massachusetts already, heading to the airport, getting ready to fly across the country. So I had so many last times. My last text messages with Molly were while I was away. My last conversations with Molly were on this day. We stood on the porch and hugged, and she said she's not mad at me, but she's disappointed. I'll never forget it. Did I know that would be my last conversation? No. I've thought about it a million times since then. So the other day, I take dance now. I'm back in dance. So this is another example of what I'm talking about. I tried rejoining the adult tap class several times. It was too much. I'd quit after 2 or 3 classes. So I'm in year 2 now, almost done with year 2. I was sitting in the dance room, the room where Gracie and Molly spent hours of their lives, where Jack now dances and Kenny watches. And I think, God, we started this 20 years ago. 20 years ago, Gracie and Molly were going to have her first recital. I sat talking with one of my dance teachers about Picture Week. And I said, yeah, Molly's last week here was Picture Week. And then we both got quiet and she went off and did something else. And it dawned on me that the day of the week that I was saying this yesterday was her last day ever setting foot inside of Concord Dance Academy. Last days. Poor Gracie had to continue to set foot in that building from the moment Molly died all the way through to her high school graduation and beyond. I can't imagine that that was an easy task for her, but she did. However, somewhere along the line, Gracie was able to reclaim that relationship as an instructor, as a helper, and it became a place that she truly enjoyed going, that she didn't walk in and get sad because she had turned a corner with it. And I think that's where I am right now with running in the Boston Marathon. It's where I am with my drug use history. Look forward to an upcoming episode where I dive really deep into what that was like and tell some horrifying stories of what my life was like during that time. Talking to Skylar, if you haven't listened to that episode, please go back and listen. And listening to what her life was like and all that she did and went through and how she has to sort of own it and live with it and defend herself is heartwarming. Listening to Joanie talk about her daughter Bailey and all the unanswered questions and all the medical tasks she had to fight and all that she's trying to do to advocate both for safety for kids on college campuses and for families in having a medical proxy so they can make decisions for their loved ones who might be over 18. Little things you don't think about when your family is alive and well, because why would you? Why would you ever think that you would need to make a decision for your dead child who's 19 and the hospital won't let you make a decision for her? They're going to make her a ward of the state because she's 19. These are all sorts of things that now that I've gone through what I've gone through, I think about. Kenny and I have a very specific trust and will and set of guidelines for what happens when we go. We had nothing in place before Molly died. I will be getting a medical proxy sooner than later so that should anything happen to any of us, we have permission to advocate for one another. 2 years ago, the Molly B Foundation became a 501c3. In my usual method of self-degradation and self-criticism, it took me, 7 years to get a 501c3. A couple of my Angel Mom friends are 1 or 2 years in and I already have them. It's mind-boggling to me. That's where they're at. This is where I was at. I can't compare myself. I was fundraising and giving away money from day one. I didn't have the wherewithal to do the whole process to make it any sort of legal thing. I just gave away money. So a couple of things have changed for me in that process. So as a 501c3, you have much wider fundraising opportunities. So 2 fundraisers are being created as we speak that will become yearly things and hopefully someday national things. One is a CrossFit fundraiser, the Molly WOD. So a WOD, workout of the day, is a CrossFit terminology. And a friend of mine from CrossFit Ironborn back in the day created a memorial workout for Molly. And we've done a memorial workout for her every year since she's died. So I met with Bethany, my foundation president, today, and we have gone over all the details to make this hopefully one day a nationwide CrossFit event that really teaches the young people in CrossFit, the children and the adolescents and the parents of young people, the importance of being kind and looking to make others happy and feel good. That participation in a CrossFit program is all about community. I'm excited about it. And I need to get over my fear of rejection and thinking I'm not worth it, I guess imposter syndrome, and really just make this happen. So to have it laid out makes me feel really good. It actually, as we speak, will be happening because the month of May is the Molly WOD month. The next thing is I have started the process of applying to be a nonprofit accepted as a fundraiser for the Boston Marathon and the New York City Marathon, which means if you wanted to run the marathon, you can peruse through all the nonprofits. You can join a fundraising team of a foundation that you like, and you have to fundraise a certain amount of money to get to be able to run the marathon. And the money that you fundraise goes to the nonprofit you've chosen. Two things are imperative about this. Everything that we've supported with the Molly B Foundation has been around theater and music and the arts and singing and all that dancing, because that's what Molly loved. But it was also not lost on Molly how much I loved running and how much I loved CrossFit. And she would want people that found happiness in those activities to be able to have access to it, just like she would want people to have access to theater camp and owning their own violin and a t-shirt from a play. She would want those things. So the process of getting started is a corner turn for me, my return to the marathon, my reconnection with people in the running community. I saw so many people from a distance that I'd forgotten I even knew. Did I go say hi to them? I did not. I'll do that next year. Hopefully this wasn't their last Boston Marathon. But anyway, it was a really profound experience and a corner turn for me. And one that I feel necessary to share for those of you who listen who are curious about grief and the grief process for mothers who have lost children. My friends are incredibly patient and loving and supportive, but I know that even as an angel mom, as a mother of a dead child, there are times some of my angel mom friends have said the same thing so often that I've come to expect it. And I think to myself, oh my gosh, how can I feel this way when I know what this person's going through? And that's just how it is. After a while, it's hard to hear because me as the mother of someone else isn't living that reality. I love when I see a new picture of somebody's child that I haven't seen before, because it takes away the, oh gosh, here's the same picture again, because maybe it's the only picture one has left, right? All these nuances of child loss that are so difficult to deal with. So what is the purpose of this podcast episode that is going all over the place? Number one, what you need to do in the beginning of your grief process is what you need to do in the beginning. So if you stay in bed all day for months at a time, that's what you need to do. If you get drunk every day, that's what you need to do. If you befriend somebody who does not have your best interest at heart and you become rather addicted to cocaine, that's what you need to do. I will never stand in my shoes and tell you what to do. Not my job. I will never judge you for what you do. Also not my job. I will never tell your story to other people in a way that makes you look bad. Also not my job. I will hope that you don't need to do some of the more dangerous things, but that isn't it. So in the beginning, you're just surviving. Then once you're able to do more than survive, you can start the process of starting your life again. Maybe it looks totally different. Maybe you're living the same life, just minus your person. Who knows what that is? And you spend a handful of years really trying to figure that out. And then you will get to a point where you turn a corner. And I've turned so many. It's just an analogy that works well in my head. I corner turned the need for drugs and alcohol. There was a time, let me be clear, I could not imagine going a whole day sober. I couldn't imagine getting to 5 o'clock and not having a drink. I counted the minutes on some of my worst days, or I drank at lunch. I couldn't wrap my head around complete sobriety. I have a good friend, Wendy, who I've talked to a lot in the beginning, and she's like, yeah, I don't take any drugs and I'm not drinking or anything. And I'm like, oh my God, she's doing this completely sober. I couldn't even wrap my head around that. Now I cannot wrap my head around being high and what that's like in my life. Do I struggle with alcohol? All the time. But I can't imagine being drunk every day. And there was a time when I couldn't imagine not. So these are the corner turns I talk about. I'm ready. I'm ready to jump back into the running community. I'm ready to run, and not just a 9-hour half marathon with Pam that leaves us crippled for days and days. No. I think I'm actually ready to put some running into my life again, some competing, some participating. I coach at a CrossFit gym and I love it. And I'm ready to notch that up a bit and intensify my connection to CrossFit athletes. And I'm ready to use these two areas that I love, running and CrossFit, as ways to promote and support and grow the Molly B Foundation, and to be able to talk about Molly for the very rest of my life in a way that hopefully won't drive people crazy. Thank you so much for listening and helping me to process through all of these things I'm going through. I know that some of it might be redundant, and I apologize, but I also don't, because somebody is listening to this podcast that has never heard me before, that is getting a whole bunch of information that they needed today. And that's what keeps me going. Be good to yourself. Listen to podcasts. Eat ice cream. Go for a walk or a run. Join a CrossFit gym. Sign up for a Molly B Foundation fundraiser. So many ways to be good to yourself. Be good to someone else. Be kind, be loving, share your oxygen mask, share kind words, be inclusive in ways that don't exclude. And as always, have a good day, everybody.
Hey, thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Feel free to leave a review and share my stories with your friends. Please reach out with your own stories, as I love connecting with my listeners. If you would like to get to know Molly, head over to mollybfoundation.org to see what she is all about. If you want to see what I'm up to next, you can find me on Instagram at barb_444, on Facebook as Barb Higgins, and at my website, 1000tinysteps.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter, a weekly way to find out what's up in the life of Barb Higgins.